Life is the result of the struggle of dynamic opposites, form and chaos, substance and oblivion, light and dark, and all of the infinite variations of yin and yang. When the pendulum swings in favor of one, it eventually swings back in favor of its opposite, and thus, the balance of the universe is maintained. During Kenshiro's first fight against Heart, his fist fails to penetrate his fat. After slapping Ken silly, Heart states that Hokuto Shinken is ineffective against him. Only King's Nanto Seiken can kill him. Naturally, Kenshiro finds his way through Heart's putrid, fat stomach to expose his pressure points and end his life. Sure, Heart wrongfully believed that Hokuto Shinken would have no effect on him, but he also believed that he stood absolutely no chance against King's Nanto Seiken. So that leaves us with one question. What is Nanto Seiken? The dualism of the universe, man and woman, yin and yang, the guardian gods Agyo and Ungyo. It is the same for the two arts of assassination, Hokuto Shinken and Nanto Seiken. If Hokuto Shinken is yin, Nanto Seiken is yang. Kenshiro has been targeted by a man known as King. Out of all of the enemies Kenshiro has faced since the beginning of the series, King is the first opponent Ken has faced that possessed martial arts skills that was of a similar caliber of his own. As we know, Kenshiro is a master of the assassination art, Hokuto Shinken. This fighting style focuses on striking the enemy's pressure points while channeling destructive ki that causes the victim to explode. Hokuto Shinken is a martial art that destroys the enemy from the inside out. As its polar opposite, Nanto Seiken destroys from the outside in. Nanto Seiken, otherwise known as the South Dipper Holy Fist. The first usage we see of Nanto Seiken is as early as chapter 4 of the Fist of the North Star manga. King retaliates. Here we see King ass naked in a cape, shoving his fingers into two men. Pause. His fingers pierce through their chests, emerging out from their backs, effectively killing them both. With the combination of super strength and ki manipulation, King has transformed his body into an extremely lethal blade. His fighting style seems to focus on stabbing techniques. However, like a blade, he is also capable of performing techniques that allow him to slice and slash through opponents. Nanto is equally as lethal as Hokuto in terms of being an assassination art. Since Hokuto Shinken and Nanto Seiken are two sides of the same coin, it is forbidden for practitioners from either side to fight against one another. King being built up to be an actual challenge to Kenshiro is very well done. Using his character to introduce Nanto Seiken as an opposing force is one of the things that makes King feel like an actual threat. The other is the history he shares with Kenshiro. In the beginning of the Fist of the North Star series, we are introduced to Kenshiro. Kenshiro is a wanderer that travels across the lawless wasteland defending the elite from outlaws and thugs that take advantage of the lawless state of the world. Wielding the deadly assassination art of Hokuto Shinken, he dispatches his opponents in a brutal and grotesque fashion. The story showcases Ken's moral mindset and lethal fighting abilities, but nothing more. You don't really know Kenshiro until he runs into King's army. I made an entire video talking about what Kenshiro did to those men. Terrible, terrible deaths. Each and every one of them. In chapter 6 of the manga, we get a sneak peek of Kenshiro's past. King's army travels to small villages, attacking and kidnapping helpless village people and enslaving them to work at Southern Cross. Each villager has the emblem of the Southern Cross branded into their skin, using hot iron that has been resting in a giant open flame. Kenshiro recognizes that emblem immediately, connecting it to the person that left the iconic 7 scars on his chest. While Ken travels throughout the wasteland helping people, the true purpose of his journey is vengeance. A year prior to the beginning of the story, Kenshiro and his fiancée Yuria visits the grave of Ken's martial arts master. Determined to start a new life with Yuria, Ken carries her over to his motorcycle, only to be approached by King and his men. King's true identity is Shin, and he's always loved Yuria, so he was going to steal her from Ken by force. Knowing full well that it was forbidden for Hokuto and Nanto to clash, he swipes and cuts Ken's face, starting the beef anyway. So both Ken and Shin perform flying kicks towards each other. Unfortunately for Ken, Shin's kick wasn't a normal kick. Turns out his kick was actually a special technique. Nanto Gaktoken, or South Star Hell Slaughter Fist, appears to be a normal flying kick. But it's pretty bad, because when they both land on the ground, Kenshiro's tendons are suddenly cut, leaving him a bleeding, bloody ass mess. For some reason the blood is black, even though the manga pages are colored. Anyway, Kenshiro is now completely helpless and cannot defend himself from what Shin is about to do to him. Shin orders his men to lift Ken off the ground and rip his shirt open, exposing his chest. If I didn't already know what was about to happen, I would have thought this scene was going somewhere I quite honestly didn't want to be. Shin demands Yuria to say that she loves him. She refuses. So he stabs Ken's chest with his finger. He just keeps going. At this point, Ken tells Shin that she isn't going to say it, so he might as well just kill me. So Shin's like, bet, sticks 4 fingers into this man. Pause. Yuria's had enough, and she actually says it. At that point, Ken has no choice but to lay there and saturate the ground with his blood and tears, watching as Shin leaves with his girl. In the anime version of this scene, they attempt to make it seem like Ken stands a chance by turning his normal kick into a special move to counter Shin's Hell Slaughter Fist. Hokuto Flying Defense Fist. You see, that's where he fucked up, choosing defense. Either way, canon is canon. Kenshiro was just simply meant to have his tendons cut, as he does. Surprisingly enough, the blood comes out red. I guess the violence wasn't radical enough to the point that they had to turn the blood into milk. Instead, they choose a different method of censorship. They decide to stylize the scene, changing the color palette of the characters to blue whenever something overly violent happens. The most violent version of this scene you can find is in the Fist of the North Star movie. Let me tell you, they dialed the violence up to the point that you have to actually search for the uncensored version of this scene. It was in fucking Italy, by the way. Check this shit out. Toei decided to put extra detail into the tendon cutting. Instead of having the blood gush from Ken, you can see the blood spraying out from the wounds. For some reason, 80s anime gore is just disturbing in comparison to some of the modern things you see today. But it gets worse. When Shin stabs Kenshiro, adding extra blood just wasn't enough. They animated his breast tissue sliding off of Shin's fingers as he removes it from the wound. This is supposed to be a battle shonen, my guy. So yeah, I pretty much made a video about Ken getting his cheek sliced in 3 different media formats. Next time we go back to the present, the next video will be the conclusion of this arc, Kenshiro versus Shin.